Corey Sandhagen versus Figueiredo, the former world champion, was the main event. But before we get to that, we had Reinier de Ridder fighting versus Bo Nickal. Bo Nickal was undefeated. Obviously, the big wrestler from Penn State has been getting built up, and this was his big step-up fight, and he fell short. De Ridder, my first exposure to him, I think, was UFC 311 a few months back versus Kevin Holland. I was very impressed, and I was more impressed after watching this one. It was good action while it lasted. I felt like Nickal at the end of the first round was starting to fade. You could see the gas tank was starting to get a little low. De Ridder was growing in confidence and growing with those knees. He didn't stop. He hurt him, and he hurt him often to the body, and he finished him with a beautiful knee. Seemed like right to the solar plexus. Anyway, De Ridder, second round knockout. Bo Nickal's first loss. What'd you make of this one, bud?
Bad matchup and mistake if you're managing. Normally, if you're managing and navigating the trajectory of your fighter, in this case, guy who they're trying to make a superstar, a phenom, like you said, from wrestling, undefeated, Bo Nickal, this was not the guy you wanted to fight at this point in his career. But that is what is really also you have to understand as to what makes UFC different. In boxing, this fight wouldn't happen. You have a manager, he would say, no, I'm not fighting this guy. Maybe 2 years from now, when there's more money involved and my guy's more experienced and it's not as risky a fight, but there's no way. There's no way we're taking this challenge now. We're taking this risk. There's just no way. We're not doing it. And instead, you would get the fighter coming up who's 8-0, who's a phenom from the amateurs, just like Bo Nickal, but in boxing. You would get him to fight, a soft touch, an easy touch. And that has hurt the brand of boxing, where you're getting these non-competitive fights for the first 2 years of these kids coming out of the amateurs that are these projected champions, these projected possible superstars, like a Bo Nickal, where they're being given fights to build their record, build their confidence, okay. But then they get more than they need with that because they were good enough to fight 200 fights in amateurs, win the Olympics sometimes, win at an international level. Yet for 2 years, you continue to feed them nothing but cannon fodder. And what happens? Two things happen. One, the brand of boxing drops off. Fans get disinterested. Fans start to get, they run for the hills. They say, I'm not going to watch non-competitive fights. So you hurt the sport. But then also, those fighters, they don't get the fights they need to develop. Once they get past a certain amount of fights, then they need to fight better fighters so they can start to develop. They can start to be tested. They can start to be challenged. They can start to know what they got to get better at. Now, I'm not saying you do it too soon. It was done too soon with Bo Nickal. It was. But in boxing, it is done way too late. That after a certain amount of time, maybe a year, 2 years, it's time to step up, and they don't. And then when they finally get to that place, sometimes they're not ready. They're undefeated, but they're not. That is the greatness of the UFC. That is what I want to make a point here before the breakdown of the fight. That the UFC, you get good fights every week because at a certain point, there are no free lunches. There are no freebies. There are no layups. There are no slam dunks handed to you to just dunk that ball. No, you have to. You got to be able to swim and swim in the deep end. You get put in, and what happens is later on, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you'll see these guys with 5 losses, 6 losses, 7 losses, 4 losses, whatever. But you'll see guys that are chiseled fighters, that are forged fighters. And you look at him and you say, oh, my God, he's got 4 or 5 losses, but this guy could beat anybody. Yeah, you know why? Because he was chiseled to be a fighter. He was forged to be, because he fought the kind of fights he needed to become a better fighter. Instead of avoiding the fights he needed to become a better fighter, to keep a better record. He gave up the record to become the fighter that he is now, that he wouldn't have become otherwise, because he faced what he had to face. Now, having said that, Bo Nickal was not ready for De Ridder. But guess what? In the UFC, this is the way it is. That is the rite of passage. That is the law of the jungle. That's the rule. That's just the way it is. Now, Bo Nickal will wind up, maybe, if he's got the goods, maybe. Or maybe he doesn't get over this. Maybe he doesn't get over it. But if he does have the goods, he'll become one of these guys with 2, 3 losses. Not the guy with no losses that will be chiseled into a real fighter. And maybe the potential that they thought he had from the beginning. Or maybe it was too soon and you never see this guy again at the level. Or he got exposed. So you're never going to see him at the level you were going to see him. But the Riddler was too big. My God, he was big. He was too big. He was too strong. He was too good. And he was too confident. And he was too mentally, I'm going to stick with the same word, chiseled. He was too, maybe those 2 losses, whatever. But he was too mentally chiseled for Bo Nickal. Terrible matchup for Nickal. But Nickal got beat in the first round, and you alluded to it. You're good, you. Remember that movie with De Niro?
Analyze this, De Niro.
You're good, you. You.
Yo. You got a gift, my friend.
You're good. Where you hit it on you were right. The first round, I saw it. In the first round, when Nickal didn't get his way, when he couldn't dominate in the area that he dominates, wrestling, getting the takedown. He got a takedown, but he couldn't get position. He couldn't control. He couldn't do what he normally does. When he couldn't dominate, when he couldn't be the boss in his area, the wrestling, he's Bo Nickal, this phenom wrestler. When he couldn't do that, you could see the air come right out of the balloon. The air being the confidence. He now was like, oh, now what do I do? You could see it. You could, if you know fighting, you could see it. And I don't mean fighting. You could see it in anything in a fight in life when a guy starts falling apart. It doesn't have to be in a cage or in a ring. But you could see that suddenly that he knew that tonight was going to be different. He wasn't going to have his way. He was going to be asked a question that he didn't know if he had the answer yet. Can I depend on myself when I don't get my way? Holy smokes. That's a tough question to be asked when you don't have the answer. So he was already defeated halfway by the time the bell rang for the second round. That's really what happened. And then he couldn't dominate. He knew he couldn't dominate. He couldn't get what he needed, to have control on the mat, to have control inside with his great wrestling skills. This guy's big. This guy's well-rounded. This guy's confident. This guy has already answered the questions that you didn't answer yet. He's already had those questions, and he answered them. He got the answers already. I can depend on myself. And then what did he do? Bo Nickal, almost out of, I know everyone wouldn't notice this, but almost out of, I don't want to say desperation, but really at grabbing for anything he could, he threw a couple punches that you could almost see. Yeah, he threw them, give him credit. He threw them, but he almost threw them just to go through the motion of throwing them because he was already in the throes of being broken down. almost submission. Almost, I'm not saying he submitted, but he was going down that road, that road, and it was going fast, and it wasn't going back up. It was all downhill. And so he just threw those two, hoping it would do something, but they did nothing. They didn't have enough behind, and this guy just took them, walked through them, made Bo Nickal back up. He backed up. I know he hit him with a few knees before that, but then he marched right to him, and he hit him with that final knee, where he already found out he had a home for the knee. That's the experience of the Riddler, too, his experience. I already know I can land this. And he ain't going to do nothing to stop me from landing it. I don't see anything changing. So he went and landed one more. And, man, I know how devastating it is when a fighter in my business gets hit a left hook to the liver. I don't even want to think about what it feels like when you get hit a knee to the liver.
Brutal. It was brutal, vicious. And, that was a great breakdown. And you will see Bo Nickal, what's inside of him, right? And being able to come back from this. And we will see what's next from de Ridder, who I was very impressed with and excited to see him fight again.